61% of women would rather talk about death than money. 63% of Australian women get to the end of the month and have a problem with their bills.
What is your money story, and do you realize that you have one? Well, my guest today, Virginia Baker-Woolf, talks about that on this podcast, where I like to figure out what makes us tick. And you know what? One thing that helps us move forward is the idea of being in control of our money. So I look forward to having you be listening into this podcast today, and let's get started. I am thrilled to speak with Virginia Baker-Woolf. It seems like you're just a master of everything. I looked at your website. It looks like you just know what you're talking about. You are a master coach, and you share that you've gone from working with a pit of snakes into working with something that you feel thrills you. And that is something, especially with women, unlocking your money story and smashing through money blocks. So thank you for being on In the Rising podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So you had mentioned to me too that money is a topic that many people don't like to talk about.
That is right.
Yes. And I saw it on your website that women would almost rather talk about death than talk about money. Share your experience with that.
Well, that is exactly correct. 61% of women would rather talk about death than money. 63% of Australian women get to the end of the month and have a problem with their bills. And so what you've got is you've got a large chunk of women who are experiencing a financial problem, but we're not allowed to talk about it with each other. And the thing is that women talk with each other about everything, every single thing. There's hardly anything that's off the table when women who are well connected are having a good conversation. Money is the last thing that we need to get over and get a handle on. And part of getting a handle on it is being able to talk about it. You know, if you feel, for example, that you're not earning what you're worth, it would be really positive for you to have that kind of a conversation with your girlfriends, because they might well say to you, well, it's right, you're not earning what you're worth. I mean, you're worth more than what you're being paid now. You need to work on that. What can we do to get you earning more money? I mean, do you need to ask for a salary raise? Do you need to move jobs? And you can have a whole bit of a brainstorming thing that might come out with results, which we're not open to at the moment because we can't talk about it. Mm-hmm. So it's a huge issue. And women end up feeling completely isolated and completely alone. And the majority of them feel exactly the same way that I did. And that was that I had a problem and I was different to everybody else. Nobody else had a problem, just me. I had a problem. So what's wrong with me? Why do I have this problem when the rest of the women don't seem to have any problem? And what I found out when I started doing this work was that my thinking was quite incorrect. And in reality, most of the women had exactly the same problem as me, but we did not dare to talk about it.
Do you feel that, because I also have read and learned that women, like storytelling, that especially for women, that is how we pass information to feel in the community. Do you feel that it is more of a current culture thing? Like if we talk about money, it's a taboo thing, or that we are exposing kind of our underwear or our closet when we talk about money?
I think it's both of those things. I think there is a huge taboo about talking about money. You know, people will talk about sex, they'll talk about drugs, they'll talk about death, but they don't want to talk about money. So that is definitely true. And is part of the reason for that taboo because we don't want to show ourselves in our undies? Yes, absolutely. But, Brené Brown says that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. So if you come out with a story that has some issues with it, that's a very, very brave thing to do. And if people laugh at you or make fun of you, those are not your people. Move away from them. Stop telling them your story. They won't help you. So it is about appearing in our undies, but we need to find in our community the other women who are prepared to sit in their undies and talk to us about their underwear drawer. When women start to talk about money, they won't feel so isolated and anxious. And I think that is really, really, really important because, as I said, I think that most women walk around thinking like I did, that I'm the only one with this problem, which is just not true. The majority have the problem.
Do you feel that this problem is almost inherited from generation to generation? Because you said...
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is, because the majority of us are living out the money story that we wrote at age 4. And that money story at age 4 came from who we were surrounded by, our parents, our grandparents, aunties and uncles, our family. And whatever the child, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever that child perceives in their environment, they will use that to form their money story. And children are unbelievably aware and they pick up on absolutely everything. And in fact, because children are so dependent, children are wired to pick up perceptions so that they know whether they're safe or not. So the children are picking up even the slightest little message about the money. So if somebody says to them, money doesn't grow on trees, or we never seem to manage with the money, that's the story that child will start living. And the very interesting thing is that even with competent, resourceful, intelligent women, when you say to them, let's go back and find the story, and we do that through various exercises, many of those women would be surprised to find the story that they really are living. Because as well as not talking to others about our money, we don't actually have the conversation with ourselves either. Like, what can I do about this problem that I've got? And it's quite a bit of work and energy to work through, but the steps are very simple and clear. You need to get really, 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 really clear on your story. You need to think, are you living out the story of your grandmother, your grandfather, your mother, your father, your auntie Jeannie, or Uncle Donald, or I better not say Donald, Uncle Jim? And then we need to work with it.
Yeah. What I was reading, because I relate to where you're coming from, because I was one of those women that never talked about what I made. And I found out, I believe that corporate uses that to their advantage. Like, this is your raise, but don't tell anyone. And finding out that some of my coworkers, there's a $20,000 discrepancy for all of us, and they had more education than I did. It shows how that it is also against you. It is a game. And to know that if you are aware of your pieces in your money story, people are less likely to use those pieces against you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, corporations don't tell anybody about salaries because they don't want people to be jealous. But of course, what happens is you could have a colleague who has the same qualifications as you, but they've been there for longer, and so they're getting paid more, or, which is far more often the case, they're the favourite of the boss, so they got a raise. So, I mean, that's another very important thing. Men in general do not have a problem about asking for more money, but women do. So, if we started to have more conversation with ourselves and with others about our money, we might get supported to go ask for that raise that we want. And yes, corporations use this kind of thing against you. They know that there's a taboo about money. They know that none of the people are talking to each other about the money, so they can do basically whatever they think they like.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Yes.
part of the reason why we need to start talking.
You talked about, and you've mentioned it a few times, that's how I felt. That's how I saw it. What became a pivotal change for you? What sparked from that Virginia to today's Virginia?
Well, we had some financial problems, and I didn't know what to do about them, and I realised that I completely depended on my husband. And I'm a very forthright, intelligent, resourceful feminist. And you see, even I was dependent on my husband for what happened with the money. And it was a bit like it was his domain. And if I tried to muscle in on his domain, he might not love me anymore. Now, this is a real true story. Imagine being a woman, a resourceful, intelligent woman who is so capable, and I'm worried that if I say to my husband, we have to share the money, decisions, and I feel like he won't love me anymore because I'm taking over his domain. Now, it's very interesting, but that dynamic is not what's going on with me and my husband. That's the dynamic that I saw going on in my household as a child. Where my father had all the control of the money, and my mother went along with that. So, I mean, even talking about myself, I am like a large majority of the women that I'm talking about, where, notwithstanding being a feminist and being very capable, I still let my husband be in control of the money, and. My husband is just not the type that has to be in charge and in control. He's very happy to share. We've been successfully married for a very long time. We've been together for a very long time. He's very happy to share with me. He wasn't the problem. I was the problem, because it was not in my experience that a woman in the household shares with the money. And the other thing was that money's boring. I used to think money was terribly boring, and who would want to be bothered with a budget because it's so boring?
Yeah.
Now, so what we all need to do, including myself, is we need to flip those kinds of beliefs. So instead of it being boring to talk about money or boring to do the budget, we can look at it as getting in a whole load of data. And we now have that data in front of us, and we now have the freedom to choose. So we have the freedom to decide that we're going to save some money, and we have the freedom to decide that we're going to spend that money on a vacation in Hawaii. So that's actually freedom. So many women see money as boring, and what we need to do is flip it to being giving you a choice and giving you freedom. So when this all happened with me, I just decided that I was a bit of a dill. That means stupid. I was a bit of a dill, and I was already a coach. I was very well aware of what I was not doing and what I was doing. So I had a very clear view on myself and a very honest view on myself. And I just decided that I didn't know anything about this, and I needed to know. And it's not fair, actually, for my husband to manage all of this and make decisions on his own. So I decided to start having a look at where could I start. And so I started with a few books, and I had this image in my head of the bag lady, of not being prepared for retirement or anything like that. And I had this image in my head of the bag lady. You know what that is?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I didn't realise that more than 50% of women are walking around with that same bag lady. I didn't know that. I thought I was the only one with the bag lady. And I talked about it with another woman, with a friend. And we went, we chatted backwards and forwards about the bag lady and about how ashamed I was to be having this very negative image in my head about the bag lady, because there was nothing in my history or experience that pointed to me ending up as a bag lady, but I was still carrying that image. And when I started to do all of the research, I found out that not only was I not odd or peculiar, I was a member of a big tribe. There's a whole tribe of us out there who let the bag lady take over in our head. Mm-hmm. And the best way of managing the bag lady is to take action, responsible action. And when your core self feels that you have taken action, they know that that core self no longer needs to feel so unhinged or fearful or anxious. Mm-hmm. So most women stumble around in the dark about money. That's what we do. And yes, it's generational. And it is still supported by our current institutions and social constructs that women don't do the money. So doing the money, getting a handle on the money, is just as important as the right to vote. Because when women can manage the money, we are more properly empowered. So, and we are more equal. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know about in America, but in Australia, there's still a gender pay gap.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very much alive.
If more women got angry about that publicly, it would have to change. So it's changed here a little bit. But, here we are in 2021 and there's still a gender pay gap. This is completely ridiculous. Once again, I don't know about in America, but in Australia, one woman a week is killed by her partner. So this is, so there's a whole issue here about women's well-being and safety. And there's a whole issue about the money. And it's like in Australia, there's quite a bit of noise at the moment about domestic violence. And there's a tiny bit of noise about the gender pay gap, but not enough. Mm-hmm. If women really advocated for themselves in regards to the gender pay gap, there'd be a whole lot of corporations who'd be shelling out more money in salaries. And of course, they don't want to do that, so they don't support it. But it's like the right to vote. We have to march. We have to get hold of the money. And in regards to women suffering domestic violence, which is something that happens across all ethnicities mm-hmm. and all income levels, the way we need to take back power, because it's very interesting that if we hand over our money power, we have to a certain degree handed over our identity power. And to be fully owning our identity, we need to have a handle on the money.
Do you feel that women are afraid of money? That the relationship to money is that we are often more fearful because we don't understand it, or we feel it's been used against it, or we haven't been taught the same way? Do you ever feel the relationship is unequal?
Absolutely. Everything you've just said is related. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in your teaching, how or what, not that you go through all the things, but what strategies do you even talk about for women to look at money? And of course it's different, but I have now learned that money is just as valuable as my pen. I use my pen. I'm not afraid of my pen. I know it's a tool for what I need. However, I'm not always worried about scarcity of my pen because I know how to use it properly. I know how to manage it. I'm learning, right? There's always more to learn. How do you go about that?
How do I go about what exactly?
Teaching women to have a different view of relationship or build a different relationship with money.
Well, look, the first thing I recommend is that they buy a book, an Australian book called The Barefoot Investor. The Barefoot Investor is written by a very nice man by the name of Scott Pape. And what he does in that book is talk in a very conversational manner about money and how to manage it. And I think it's an excellent book to start with, because I think that in any reading women are doing, they're already going into the topic with some anxiety. So the sooner that anxiety can be soothed, the better. And I find that the way that man writes that book, it's very soothing, and he doesn't make you feel like an idiot. And there's another book in Australia by Melissa Brown called Unfuck Your Finances or Unfuck Your Money. And she does the same thing. And just like the title, I mean, the book is, I've got it here on the table. The book is, the cover is black and the text, the cover is hot pink. And she takes exactly that kind of attitude, like our money's fucked, we've got to fix it. So I think those are the best, that reading something and educating yourself, but in a way that doesn't disempower you or make you feel anxious, is the first place to start. The second place to start is to treat this as a game. See if you can treat this as a game. Get a budget spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet. And I've got a very nice one that people can have. And there are whole loads of divisions, topics in the budget, items in the budget. And so you've got your money in and then you've got your money going out. And once you have that information at hand, you are then free to make further decisions. And I would go so far as to say that if women can manage to do those two things, they've made a huge step forward. The other thing, let's say three things. The third thing is to start an automatic savings deduction. And what that is your salary or your income gets paid into your current account, but you set up another account over here, which is a savings account, and you do an automatic transfer every month. And if people say, Virginia, I don't earn enough money to be doing that, I say do it with $10. Because when you do that, it's a very small step that has huge benefits, because when you do that, you feel like you're taking some control, you're taking some responsibility, you set up a system, and it's a little bit like you are on your way. So start reading something that's conversational, but the information is excellent. Start looking at keeping a budget and treat it as a fun thing. Treat it like if we can get this budget under control, we can take a vacation instead of looking at it as being boring. And then an automatic savings deduction because of what it does to the mindset. Those are the three things I would say to start with. And then in my courses, we look at the money story. Everybody needs to look at the money story. And that I include myself in everything I say. Like, I'm not above and beyond any of this, even though I have done a heap of research and a heap of reading and I got certified as a money coach. This still affects me. I still have to be aware and be on top of it, because we can very easily slide back. So I include myself in any advice I give to other people. I include myself in. But if women could start with those three things, and then when they've got that under control and they feel like they've made a bit of progress, and that might take them a few days or it might take them a week or a month, then the next thing is to deal with the money story. So we all have a money story and we need to change the story. So story is a fascinating thing. And we all live with narratives, all of us. We all have a narrative. Like we have a work narrative and a relationship narrative and a money narrative. We've got many narratives going on in our life at the same time. The money narrative is something we can take hold of and change. Mm-hmm. And yes, there is a certain amount of imagining the future. But what we want to do is imagine the future in the present, and we want to internalize it.
I like how you said that, internalize it, not just sitting there intellectually, but actually putting it in and believing it.
It needs to be a felt sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then there are various other topics to go into. Like when somebody's done those 4 things, there are then more topics like deservingness, enoughness. We all go through life. We wake up in the morning and we say things to ourselves like, I didn't get enough sleep, or I don't have enough time to do this, or I don't have enough money to buy this, or whatever it is. All of us, we are constantly running stories of not enoughness. And the way to change that story is to become very aware of where we're running that story. Because we need to start saying, there is enough and I am enough. And then a lot of women are under earning, and we shrink to fit other people's ideas of what we should be earning, and we allow that to happen. So I think under earning is a huge issue for women. And, you know, the last job I had where I was paid a salary, I was definitely under earning. And if I look back on that time now, I can see what I should have done. I should have actually gone to the boss and said, look, I have much greater capacity to bring to this organisation than I'm currently able to do in the position I'm in. That's number one. And number two is I'm worth an awful lot more money, because if you're paying that person over there $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 more than me, I am more intelligent than they are, and I can do a better job. So how can I work with you so that I have more enjoyable work at a higher level and I'm getting paid for that? Now, you see, that is exactly the type of thing that men will decide on much faster than a woman.
I like that. And I'm gonna sit in my underwear with you figuratively at this moment, because this recently happened. And as an example to what you said in my review, that I literally did the work of 2 people plus some. How much productivity? I was over 100%. And out of the maximum 5% that you could, of course, you know, that is their max, it was 2.92% raise. And I simmered on that. And I still, you know, I still work there. But I tell you, it changed my perception of how long, and B, what I actually need to do. Because under no circumstance can I by myself do the work of 2 people and only make the income of 1. Right? That does not equal 1 + 1 still equals 2. There's basic math here, and I can still add with that. And I think that is something where in that moment, it changed I understand that this will put food in the fridge now, but I'm not planning to stay there very long with that, to have that, really to just build myself up and not think, well, this is what they could afford, because I know what they can afford. And it's definitely at least an entire another salary just from my work alone. It's the power gaining that, where it's not necessarily ego, but it's confidence in your worth financially and emotionally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And if you don't mind me saying, the thing with that is to go and ask for a salary review. And you see, this is where we need to advocate for ourselves a lot more. So if you're a woman in that position and is your boss a man or a woman?
It is a woman.
Oh, it is a woman. Well, see, I think that changes things. Well, I think it's easier to approach a woman than it is to approach a man. And I think that society is geared to not giving women more. And we're just supposed to put up with what we've been given. and not shift out of it. Well, I would challenge any woman that thinks she's worth more money that she ask for it. And if they won't give it to her, start looking around.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yes. You've done a lot. You have this money coaching program. I'd like you to share, what are you doing now to empower women to change their story and learn more about how to move from where they are to where they want to be?
Okay, so this week, like any day, my learning consultant still has some work to do on it this afternoon, and I don't know if she'll be finished this afternoon, but by the end of this week, I will have launched a new course. And this course is priced so that any woman could do it. In the third world, maybe they wouldn't be able to manage it. But in the first and second world, Western world, yes, they can certainly manage it. So I've priced it at $97 Australian, which is $75 US. Now, this is an absolute giveaway price because it's worth $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
But I decided that this was such an overwhelming problem for half of the world's population that I would be very happy if I made a difference for somebody. And people who might want to do a money course, mostly that would be because they perceive that they have some type of problem. And so I priced it so that that woman, like say that woman's a waitress, or, in this country, waitresses do quite well and they get big tips and they also get paid properly. In the States, where they get paid a lousy amount of money, they could still do this. And what the course does is it changes your story. So we do a lot of work on your story. We do a lot of exercises. And we build the relationship with money and we flip the story. That's module 1. Module 2 is to get to know your money self. And there are 2 quizzes in with that. One quiz is your money archetype. And the money archetype quiz is very simple, but it's quite profound because of how accurate it is. It's quite it's just quite surprising that something so simple could be so profoundly accurate.
Yeah.
And when you discover your money archetype, the 1, 2, or 3 that are running your life, I then give you strategies for how you can work with that to improve it. And then the other quiz we do is a values quiz. Because when women can align their money with their values, they will find that they are much happier.
Yeah.
So, for example, if a woman has a value of beauty, and I have this, and this is like a creative sort of a thing. So if somebody has a value for creativity and beauty, but they're not doing anything creative in your life, I would go so far as to say that they're stunted in some way. And in the ebook, this module also includes an ebook where they get to do projects on themselves. So they get to take a value that they're not expressing and they figure out a project so that they can express this value.
Mm.
So that's module 2. Module 3 is all about practicalities because money causes an inordinate amount of stress. Money causes more stress than anything else does, and nobody talks about it. And the only way out of the money stress is to become aware and for women to stop stumbling around in the dark. So in that module, I go through 9 steps, and one of them is setting up an automatic savings deduction. But there are other steps, including how a woman would determine what her hourly rate is. So if you're a freelancer in anything, or you've got a side hustle, how are you determining your prices and your rate per hour? Because I guarantee you that 90% of people don't know. They just haven't thought of all of the things that go into that. So it's like, you charge $150 an hour for your time, but have you thought about your taxation? your insurances, your professional development, utilities, and most people have not thought of those things, but they need to be thought of up front so they can be included in the hourly rate. So that hourly rate probably changes from $150 to $250. And if they don't charge that, they're making much less than the $150. So it's just to make people aware of that. So in that module, there are 9 practicalities, and the aim is to bring down the stress. Because the American Psychological Society says this stress is more or less the worst stress, and it causes all sorts of physical issues and problems. So we've got to get hold of it. Module 4 is busting through money blocks. So there are 13 major money blocks, and what are we going to do about them? So the first thing is to become aware, and then the next thing is to employ some techniques to bust through those blocks. So I introduce people to a thing called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, because that's the technique that I have had the most success with. Module 5 is the 3-step circuit breaker, and it goes hand in hand again with the stress. So in the 3-step circuit breaker, they get 3 techniques to use to mitigate their stress. And they're not difficult things, and they don't cost any money. They're what you can do right here and right now with your breath and with your vision. So most people won't know that when you take in a panoramic view and you don't focus on any pinpoint, your brain finds that very relaxing in comparison to sitting here looking at a screen. So they're just a few simple things that people don't actually know that are really, really easy. And then in Module 6, we put it all together and we make a plan for moving forward. And as I said, it's worth at least $1,000, and it's 97 Australian dollars, 75 US, for a course that will take you, to do Module 1 will take you 2 weeks.
Yeah. So there's so much. So it's really about there's no excuse with this. Like you're making your income, but here you're looking to make a legacy and an impact, and you're reaching more with that. So there is no excuse. And there is a point when, yes, your resources may be limited, but at the same time, your resourcefulness is unlimited. And so especially with a course like this, if there is a value for learning and growing with your money, because some people, we kind of, I've been there myself. I put my hand up. Sometimes you live and you're comfortable with your problems, and change is uncomfortable. But
Absolutely.
once you want to move it, you have to step into that and sometimes you have to be, and I heard this from Dave Ramsey, money person, if you're so, you're not going to move the needle. But when you get finally really angry with a situation, that anger can actually be just a little bit of that rocket fuel that you needed to move forward, to have Absolutely. A review, to have a course that you go through, to reach out to someone. Mm-hmm.
And I would go so far as to say that if a woman says, I find the money thing quite anxiety provoking, I don't want to do a course where we talk all about that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about writing a new story. And for any woman who feels a little bit anxious about it, I would say treat this as a game. Just treat it as a game. Treat it as something fun, and just do the exercises. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Don't get overwhelmed, and just keep working through it. Because in the module 1, where there's a lot of work, it's actually a very interesting work. It's really interesting to go back and see the money story you wrote for yourself and the impact your parents, grandparents, auntie and uncle had on you, and often the beliefs that people have carried without realising. For example, I was particularly close to one of my grandmothers. I loved her to bits. She thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. Now, she was a very fine pianist. She was devoutly religious, and she thought money was a bit dirty. Like, we don't talk about money and we don't go anywhere about money. And money is a bit like that's not our domain. Money's dirty. And I realised this year, so even years after I started this work, I just realised this year doing an EFT session that I was actually carrying my grandmother's pattern. Money, we're too good for money. We're too educated. Money is down there. Well, that's a crazy attitude. That's a crazy attitude. Now, in my other course, my big course, we deal with those things I was saying: deservingness, enoughness, under-earning, overspending, the bag lady syndrome, Prince Charming syndrome, imposter syndrome. So we deal with a whole lot more. It's 8 modules, and it's much bigger than the very cost-sensitive course. And if somebody does the first course and they think, gee, I like this, I'd like to do more, then they get a credit for what they've already paid out.
Okay, so to take this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because some of the things, a few of the things are repeated. So I don't want people doing a course and then signing up to do another course and they find, oh, gee whiz, but I did this already. Mm-hmm. So that's why they won't, there'll be a few things that they won't need to do because they'll already have it done. But there's still a heap more work to do. But I didn't feel comfortable with that. So I decided the best way to manage me not being comfortable with that was just to say people can have a credit of $97 against any other course that they want to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
How can people find out more about you?
They can go to my website, themoneyproject.net.
Okay. And you also have a podcast, correct?
I don't have my own podcast yet. That'll be something I do in the new year.
Okay. Well, I'm super excited. What is your, I mean, I know it's about money. What is your podcast title? Where are you going with that?
Wow, Bettina, I haven't even thought about it. It'll be something to do with money is as important as the right to vote.
Yeah.
Something about women advocating for themselves, empowerment. I don't know. I'd have to sit with that for a couple of days. I haven't decided on a name.
Yeah.
But the best way to get me now is at the Money Project. And if they think that they'd rather talk to me first, there's a schedule button there on the website, and they can book a 15, 20-minute call if they want to suss me out themselves. That's fine. I'm happy to do that.
Wonderful. And then what is on the horizon left for you? You've done so much. To create a work, of course, is a lot. It's intensive research. What are you looking forward to?
The next thing, various things. Have you heard of an EFT lady called Margaret Lynch?
I have not.
Okay. So Margaret Lynch does some excellent training, and I have, it's a course that's completely about EFT. So that's one thing. And then I want to do 2 other things. I want to do one course on burnout, mm-hmm. because I think that a lot of women get very burnt out and they don't know what to do with that. And I've been there. And when you're in the middle of that, it can be quite difficult to figure the way out. And then also I want to do some kind of life design self-coaching thing, like 8 modules on redesigning your life. Mm-hmm. So that's what's coming after this.
I love your creativity. I love your creativity, and that, it sounds like this is something that fuels your soul, and this is a podcast, but I can see your energy, and your power behind your words, that this is something so incredibly meaningful for you, to really change the lives of other women, just like you've changed with yourself.
That's right, Bettina. And the issue is, look, this is the same with any coaching. But because money is an issue that we deal with day in and day out, it's especially true of money. Oh, God, I forget what I was going to say. What were we saying?
I said you have just so much power and zeal behind what you do.
It's about the ripple effect. It's about the ripple effect. When women have more money in their hands, but more importantly than that, when women have made it okay for themselves to deal with money, when they do that, they deal with a whole load of other issues, personal development issues in their life, like self-esteem, self-confidence, self-concept. So by working through the money, they work through a whole load of other issues, and they empower themselves personally and professionally through working on those other issues. And what happens then is that mother is then a somewhat different mother. Mm-hmm. She's a more resourced mother. And when we have resourced mothers, the quality of mothering has to improve. And when we have better mothering, and I'm not laying it on mothers. I mean, I've been a mother. I had my good days and my bad days, like everybody.
Yeah.
But when women are happier and more empowered, it sends a ripple out into the world. And our families improve because we bring, like I said, we bring a more resourceful self to the table. So we are more resourced to help our children, and that will make them healthier. And we're more resourced for having an equal partnership relationship, which is what our children will later mirror as well. Mm-hmm. So there are lots of ripples for women in doing this work. And it is a bit of a legacy thing for me. If I thought I could help a couple of thousand women move forward in their lives and create ripples so that they could be a better mother, a more loving, resourced mother, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. And then as you should be, because it's huge, right? One person at a time. It's the ripple effect in other ways, right? When that's you right. Invest into yourself, you create a different within your community, just from people watching you, cousins, that's right. Whoever. It makes a ripple effect. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that. I have really come away with so much from this podcast, time with you, this conversation, and I'm really grateful. I love that you're a coach. I mean, you just, we all have our ups and downs, or good days, no bad days, but you just seem like you have really come a long way with this. It's that you're definitely come across as very trustworthy with this knowledge and your own vulnerability with expressing your story. So I'm really grateful for your time today.
Oh, you're very welcome, Bettina. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Yes.
So Virginia Baker-Woolf has so many important quotes. First of all, that we talk more and enjoy to talk about death more than we do money, but just having a different relationship and a different view of money. And so I really invite you to look into your relationship with money, and also follow up with Virginia Baker-Woolf. I have all of her information in the description below in the show notes, especially if you are feeling disenchanted with money. And so many of us are at this point in our life. So if you felt this podcast was of benefit, I encourage you to share it with others, put it in the hands and ears of those that can make a difference. Please leave a 5-star review if you're listening to this as a podcast. It does so much. And if you're listening to it on YouTube, go ahead, hit the like button and subscribe. And until next time, let's keep building one another up.